Hey Maniacs, Mark here. We got a great episode of Midsomer Maniacs for you today. It's not a regular episode. We're not recapping an episode of the show, but we do have an interview with Lisa Holdsworth, who is a TV and theater writer who has written for Midsomer Murders, New Tricks, Waterloo Road, Discovery of Witches, Call the Midwife, a whole bunch of British shows that are fantastic. She's written 4 Midsommers, Red in Tooth and Claw, Saints and Sinners, Vintage Murder, and Schooled in Murder. We had a great time speaking with her, and I know you're going to enjoy this interview.
Lisa, we have been stalking you all week.
I can only apologize.
No, we've been reading your tweets and watching lots of interviews with you. And I just have to say, I think that you are incredible. I was so moved by how often you take the opportunity to talk about how important it is to increase diversity in your business and how many times you've explained to people, you know, how you got to where you are and that you just worked really hard, you know?
Oh, thank you. I think it's probably my top priority is making sure that diversity of voices in television, not just British television, all television, because I love telly. I love watching it. And if it's the same people writing the same stuff over and over again, that'd be very sad.
Yeah,
you know, that's exactly what got me going on. I kickstart comic books. So my comic is about 3 teenage girls of color. They use science to overcome supernatural enemies.
Cool.
And is drawn by a LGBTQ woman in the same state that we're in. And I'm trying to get it so that I'm not even a white guy isn't part of the process.
I think that's ultimately, you know, the goal for, as you said in last week's podcast, I'm the chair of the Writers Guild, which is the trade union for writers in the UK. So you've got the Writers Guild of America, where the WGGB, and that's our ultimate goal, that we'll see people at the top who are representative of what the UK looks like. At the moment, it really isn't in any way. So it's very stale and pale, and a lot of people who went to private school. So that needs to improve.
Yep. And that's the case in so many industries, right? Not just TV. I work in a business school and at a Big Ten university, at a major research university, and we're constantly like questioning who we should hire and who we should work with. And like, hey, maybe a pink-haired tattooed lady could be, you know, a leader in this school. What do you know?
It's that representation that matters, that when people start to see it and I think American television, since the onset of the Black Lives Matter movement this time around, the reaction has been really clear. You're beginning to see, I love American cop shows. I love anything that's got Dick Wolf's name on it, all of that kind of thing. And seeing how that reaction has come through and how an understanding of actually we were part of the problem and now we have to address it is really interesting. I think it's been a fascinating year in American television.
One of the things that we love about British TV is that though it seems like you guys only have about 30 actors to go around.
Yeah. And they've all been in Harry Potter.
So. Oh yeah, if you do like actors in common between Midsomer and Harry Potter and anything else, you know, They're all there. But they're not all beautiful people. They look like, a lot of them look like regular people, like ordinary people.
We love a character actor. We really love someone, particular, and it's great for women as well that you don't have to be blonde and self-like. I speak as a blonde and self-like person myself. I can say that because it's a podcast. But yeah, and our soaps have real gravitas over here. I know that you've lost a lot of your soaps in America over the last few years, that a lot of them have come to the end. But that's where people cut their teeth on television acting. And we like, you know, proper gritty drama in our soap operas. So if you did a Venn diagram of who's been in Coronation Street, Emmerdale, which I used to write for, and EastEnders, which is probably the one you may have heard of over there, then you'd get a lot of that moving up into Midsomer and the high-end stuff.
Yeah. So tell us about how your Midsomer gig came about, because you've written for New Tricks and Emmerdale and Robin Hood, and then there's Midsomer.
Do you know what? It came out of the blue for me. I really didn't think I was right for that show at all. And to be honest with you, I took the job in a sort of, okay, we'll give this a go, see how we go on. Because I loved New Tricks, and New Tricks had I did 11 of them in the end, and it had a very tongue-in-cheek attitude to it. We didn't take it too seriously. We were always looking for the funny in it. And I assumed that would be the case at Midsomer, but actually I came in a bit hot when I first got onto Midsomer. That they take it very, very seriously, and they're so difficult to structure. So if I'm absolutely honest with you, all 4 of them were a difficult birth. They were banging my head on the desk and getting kidnapped and taken to Pinewood to work out the story over and over again. But they just called my agent and said, does Lisa fancy a pop at this? And I took it in a very sort of, let's see how this works out. And then when I pitched the cheese idea, this is going to go one of 2 ways. And it went the other way. They just went, that's fascinating. Do some more work on that, And we ended up with that extraordinary episode. I mean, Andy Hay did an amazing job on directing it. And I'd worked with him before, actually, on New Tricks, and I knew I was in safe hands when I saw his name on the front of the script. So, and probably one of the best casts in British television, I think.
Well, it'll come as no surprise to you that Midsomer had its issues with diversity and with
very much so.
Brian Trumaze had said. I think maybe they contacted you because you're pretty outspoken about this stuff and you had a proven record. I hope they sort of said, let's get her because she'll improve us where we need to be improved.
That would be really nice. Better that they found a Black or Asian writer to do that, but this is the business. Yeah, and it's interesting because I've been an activist with the Writers Guild for a long time now, and people are really nervous about putting their head above the parapet. It was never not an option for me. I come from a family of big mouths, frankly. So I was always going to speak up, and I don't think it's ever harmed my career. And if I've lost jobs because of it, I'm not aware of it, and they can...
And good riddance, right?
Exactly. I don't want to work for people like that.
Yeah.
So, we're very aware of all that going on, and we discussed if the demographic for Midsomer, especially in America and UK, is older white people, and older white people in the United States have problems with their
not all,
political
but some.
leanings sometimes. Yeah. And we were like, should we be saying these things? And we were like, if we lose those listeners, we lose them. I don't really care.
Yeah.
It was interesting. The night that episode went out on Twitter, there were a couple of quite well-known black actors in the UK. Jimmy Akimbola, who you can see in the first series of Ted Lasso. Oh, I love that show.
Oh, we'll talk about Ted Lasso.
I love that show so much. And Hugh Quarshie, who is in Holby City, which is one of our big medical dramas, and they were saying, "Oh my God, there's a black guy in Midsomer. Oh, he's dead." It's like, well, that's kind of the USP of the show. Most people
that's equal opportunity in Midsomer. Everybody can die in a weird way, right? No matter what color you are.
I think I gave him a good death as well, and he wasn't like Martine killed before the opening title. So, no. But yeah, I think the show has come on in leaps and bounds in the last few years. I think it's a much better show for it as well.
So you said that it was difficult to get like the storyline and the plot points mapped out. Were you a Midsomer fan before you wrote for the show? Had you seen a lot of it?
I am going to be really honest now. I hadn't watched a whole episode. Midsomer has a really strange... We have a strange relationship with it in the UK. It feels like it's always on. Mm-hmm. And because it's 2 hours long, I think a lot of people engage in it in a very sort of casual in and out way. There is a real hardcore fans, and they're there to be respected, and they keep the show going. And there's a reason it's been going for as long as it has. So I've not really engaged with it. I thought it was quite middle class, and it wasn't really for me. And I was aware of the Brian Trumaze stuff as well. So when I got the offer, the first thing I had to do was order a box set, and that's how long ago it was. Now I've just streamed it, but order a box set, and I sat and watched episode after episode after episode, and tried to absorb it and absorb the structure. It is a really really oddly structured show because it goes out on commercial television in this country. We get what we call the ad tag. So as you go out, you need a big hooky moment. It's usually someone dying to come back in. I mean, certainly in that episode, I did have the absolute maximum dead bodies you're allowed.
You did.
It's between 3 and 5, and I went for the full 5. So it was great fun to do, but it was definitely a head scratch. In the first draft, I didn't have enough characters. I was killing people, and they go, "Well, there's no one left to have done the murders." It just kept going. It just kept going.
There are a couple episodes like that where they're on the sort of character sheet. There's 2 people left, and you're like, "Okay, well, one of these people did it."
It's like, who's the best known actor who's still alive? Okay, they did it.
And I was so lucky that Martin read that script and went, "Yeah, I'll be dead in the open times," because everybody watching that went, "Oh, she did it." And then she's dead from the cheese. So it's a brilliant bit of casting from Andy there.
So the cheese was your idea. Did they give you anything, like any kind of limitations or direction or anything before you started writing, or was it all up to you?
It's mainly, don't do this because we've just done it in the last season, you won't have seen it. So, and there's a bit of a hard and fast rule. They don't, even though they've done it in the past, they don't want to do it again. Cults and weirdy religions and things like that. So that literally was the only steer I got. And you put what we call a one-pager and you go, this is the world I'm setting it in. So you're quite right. As you said in your podcast, we find these odd little villages that are full of people who all work in the same industry.
Yeah.
And that was the picture. I can't remember why it was the cheese, but it was the caves that came to me first. What an amazing look at what if Midsomer had its own cheese caves. And then I literally started Googling cheese, what's the weird thing, found the maggoty cheese and thought, oh, well, that's got to go in. I found the cheese needles, they've got to go in. And suddenly it did start coming together. And then sort of with the flip side of the idea of the schools. And I think there was something in the news at the time about private schools and scholarships and things like that. It might have been around the time our exam results come out, because we're having that discussion at the moment. Our big exam results came out this week in the UK. So I think it was one of those, it all started to come together eventually. And because the school part is about class, and I think that is an obsession. You'll have noticed we're a bit obsessed with class in this country, and Midsommar's a really great place to explore that.
Were you nervous about the cheese, or did you feel like, oh, this is a really Midsomer thing to do, this is going to work?
I was worried they might think it was a bit too tricksy and themey. And we were nervous first, and obviously it went through multiple, I think it was 11 drafts in the end, and they're massive documents because they're 90 minutes of screen time. But actually, the heart of the story and the bullying stayed in place throughout, which wasn't true on the other episodes I wrote. Often the killer I started with was not the killer at the end. As we went through the drafts, wouldn't it be better if he did it? Oh, wouldn't it be better if she did it? But this one, that central idea of the woman coming back to wreak her revenge stayed in the spine of it throughout, and I really love that. And that was the hardest sell. They said, oh, we don't really usually do, it's usually people are doing it for money or for because they're having an affair and they're offering the people who know about it because they've witnessed something. This sort of revengey psychological aspect, it was a bit different for Midsomer, but they gave me the chance and we made it work.
I think it worked really well. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I think when the voice of the show kind of changed with Neil Judgeon coming on, and I think they took that opportunity to make the cast more diverse. And I think they began to look at a couple of more diverse methods. And they're into 90 episodes here. They're gotta spread their wings a little bit and do it.
They're running out of ways to kill people.
you run out of ways. You literally sit there as you're writing it going, okay, so shortness of breath, drowning, penetrating wound, crushing. How can I make this much more interesting? Because people love the weird deaths. So.
Yeah, whenever we talk to somebody about Midsomer who's only a little bit familiar with it, they go, "Is that the show where the lady was killed by the cheese?" I'm like, yes, it is like one of the iconic murders now, and I think it is it's indicative of what the show's about. It doesn't take itself too seriously. So that kind of death can happen. It's not, a Marple where, everything has to be kind of, serious and Poirot's going to get upset if it's silly. It's okay that it's a little silly. Did you know that you were writing Jones's last episode?
I didn't know, and it's a shame we didn't know Jason was going to leave, or else I think we would have given him a much bigger send off. It's the sort of what we call the serial element is very light. It's very light touch, and I think what's interesting about Asher, whereas now a lot of these detective dramas have terribly flawed characters who are drinkers and gamblers and womanizers, the heart of that show, the Barnabys, they're perfectly normal. She's a teacher, he's a police officer, and the worst thing that happens is the dog eats a ring, and the rest is absolutely, they're lovely at the heart of this terrible, dark county that they live in.
That's one of the things we love about the show.
Yeah, they're a reaction to that darkness. They're the rock of normality that the story can hang off of.
Very much so, yeah.
And I like that the Barnaby detectives are not alcoholics or womanizers, or, they don't cheat on their wives. That makes it feel kind of warm and cozy because, certain things, people might die from cheese or stuck in a dryer or whatever, but Barnaby's never going to break the rules in that way. He's never going to break our trust in him. And it makes it kind of nice to watch.
Even though, unfortunately, I don't think it's a reflection of the truth all the time, the idea that a police officer is so solid and so diligent, and they call it the de Bonnet moment, which is sort of comes towards the end where he finally puts two and two together and goes, and then ad break, and then whose house are we at? Because he's finally going to reveal the murder. And that writing those, it's such a satisfying thing to do, and you believe it. You believe that all the while his head is turning everything over and putting things in place, and he's looking at the board and going, oh, if that's going on there, blah, 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 blah. And he's putting the timeline together, and that's very, very satisfying to write. And I think Neil does an amazing job of acting that as well.
We're close watchers. You're well aware of that.
I know that now. Yeah.
So we gave up timelines long ago because we have the benefit of understanding how television gets made and things like that. So the first couple of episodes of the podcast, I was drawing calendars and times and everything, and then I was like, this is not going to work. That you just simply can't.
You just got to go with this
because some days it's sunny and some days it's not, and sometimes you got to do day for night shots and things like that. And sometimes you forget to change the clothes, and sometimes the continuity person is like, "Oh crap, I forgot that," and all that stuff. So. But
so you work out in your head. I mean, it's so weird that the discussion with the script editor and the producers. You can have knockdown fights about, does this story work? Well, how did she get the maggots? Why did she have the maggots in her pocket? Which is a fair question. But my answer to that is that she had been basically stalking these women as long as she'd been in the village. She knew what was going on with the dodgy cheese, and she was trying to expose them. I don't think she actually meant to kill Jim. I'm pretty sure she didn't, but I think she certainly meant to off the women off. And poor Maggie Steed was going to get it in the end, but I think justice is better served with her.
Oh, Maggie Steed is so great in that episode.
She's amazing. Do you know, it's the second time I've written for her. She was in one of my new tricks, and she was just glorious. We had a really great read through, and she was just delightful. I was really nervous in that read through, and she very much stilled my nerves very early in my career. She's an absolute national treasure.
She is. We remember her from Pie in the Sky.
Yeah.
She was so good in that.
When I was little, she was in a show called Shine on Harvey Moon, which was about sort of post-war Britain, and she was amazing in that as well. She's great.
I think we've talked about that show. I think so. Sounds familiar. So how much in the process, in the know are you of that casting? Like, did you know Martine was going to be in that part before you wrote it, or did they come to you and say, well, we want to work her into an episode, or how did that work?
Or do you have to make tweaks once you hear who the cast is, even if it's written?
Literally that, which is until they put the cast list out the week before the read through. So we do a table read just to make sure it all works, which they're awful. Writers hate them, but they are very necessary. So then they send you the cast list, and they'll drip through the and say, we're trying to get. So for one of my episodes, they were going to try and get Joan Collins, and I think it came really close, and then we didn't get her. So occasionally we will rewrite stuff as the casting comes in. We need that to be a bit more like this, a bit more like that. Certainly now, if someone lets me know there's a different cultural background, if someone's Black or Asian, then maybe I might change the names and make sure I give it a sensitivity read, make sure I'm not putting anything in there that seems ridiculous.
That makes sense. So I'm sure you're familiar with the rules of like a classic era mystery, and that when you write a mystery, you're not supposed to have the detective know anything that the audience can't know, so they can have a chance to try to solve it. Was that challenging when you're writing these, to kind of find opportunities to make sure the audience had the clues too?
Yeah, that's what changes from draft to draft. So there'll always be a draft where it's really obvious, and someone will read it and go, well, I can guess in the first 10 minutes who's done it. And then you pull it back, and then everybody reads it again, and you go, actually, I think that comes from left field. So let's put a little clue in there. And you also want to make the red herrings not too red herringy as well, so not too fishy. So making sure that feels real. So every draft is that constant discussion of, is that working? Are we tipping it too much? Are we not giving the audience enough? That's definitely the discourse that's going on throughout the drafts.
So in the case of the Scolded murder, were there clues that got cut in the edit, you think? Or in the edit, because sometimes we watch episodes and we're like, okay, there's a piece of information missing there, and it's probably on the cutting room floor. That the reason why we don't know that fact is because that scene got cut at some point.
And it's often those very expositional scenes where Barnaby and whoever the sidekick is this time is having a chat as they stood by the cars in Carson Station car park. So those are often because they're dull and they're really boring, and sometimes you see them in situ and you go, we're just spoon feeding here. Let's cut that. But actually, for Scolded Murder, I think pretty much everything went in. I don't think we were missing a great deal. So I think Andy did great. I mean, he's a great director, so Andy put in what we needed. But the director will ring you occasionally and go, I'm thinking of cutting this scene, but am I pulling a thread? Am I cutting something that I don't realise is going to have a knock-on later? But for the most, yeah, occasionally. I think it's more the expositional standing around in the police station scenes that tend to go.
Where they say, oh, I pulled this report and got this piece of information.
Exactly.
But it's a boring way to present it. That makes sense.
For the production staff, we stop and read everything that's on screen. We have found all sorts of. We've only found one clear mistake. There's "this is a closed set" sign in one of the scenes.
Oh no!
Where the set dresser said "dress the set."
Yeah.
So and didn't want anybody to touch anything, and then they forgot to take the sign away, and they shot it, and it's in we love that kind of stuff.
Like,
oh yeah, just makes it bad. I think filming in the current era, you might see a few. I've noticed a few little problems in things that have been filmed during the COVID time because you can't have everybody on set and everybody's trying to keep their distance. So having all those eyes, we've reduced the number of people kicking about. So on set, if you go, oh, I think that was over there, that seems to be problematic at the moment. And, actors are checking their own costumes because obviously people couldn't get up close and personal. That's getting better now. It's been very difficult to film anything that's period because the costumes are so intricate. So working on Discovery of Witches, we've had a few period bits, which has been quite problematic, but we've sorted it out now.
I can't imagine. And somebody whose job it is just to ensure that continuity and that period continuity, that you don't see somebody in a mask way off in the distance.
Exactly.
I'm sure they're
Hard
cutting
enough.
that kind of thing.
It's hard enough with planes and noise, like audio guys deal with that all the time.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about School to Murder, we have to talk about maggots. How did the maggots come about? And what
Did you write that scene and go, they're never going to do this?
That actor was a trooper.
Well, I was quite shocked when I saw that footage because I thought, they'll put a couple just on his cheek or something like that, but they went the full. It was very maggoty. Let's put it that way.
Full maggot, yeah.
Absolutely. But the minute I read about this illegal cheese, I needed James to be doing something dodgy that wasn't murders, basically. So what's a man who makes cheese do? But then started reading about this cheese that is illegal to export, and the maggots can jump up into your eyes and things like that. It was just disgusting reading about it. And so and that's she's trying to tip off the police and throw them off the scent and get everybody else in trouble by putting the maggots on. It's supposed to be a bit of a red herring for the investigation. So I was pretty shocked. I mean, good grief, what a trooper. And also because the garroting murder is perhaps a little dark. You don't need to see much of that, but then to get the full horror of it. And also, he kind of deserves it.
Yeah.
He does.
He is a midsummer trope of the unlikable middle-aged white male husband.
Misogynist, yeah.
It's horrible. And when you find out about that he sent Jake away because he didn't want him to be part of the family and all of that, he just a bit further down the line go, well, he's no great loss to society, so...
Have a mouth of maggots. You deserve it.
Exactly.
I'm sure if you listened to the episode where we talked about this episode, then you heard us talk about, is Lisa trying to say something about writers? That if you don't give them space to write, they might snap?
Do you know what? It's only looking back. I don't know. I can't remember why I wanted it to be. It needed to be something that she could reasonably do in the village, but she just didn't feel connected. I needed it to be quite rarefied. This is where she's come from, and probably in their heads it was like, oh, this will be great, we'll go back to the village, how wonderful. And within days it was bringing that trauma of what she'd experienced at the school back. She probably saw Martine driving around in her open top red car and thought, oh no, I can't cope with this. And so the idea of writer's block is definitely a big part of it. The idea that you just can't write, you can't get 5 minutes to yourself. You've got your idiot husband getting obsessed with cheese and all of this carry on. And I think most writers have been there in a small way. Most of us have not committed murders. As the chair of the Writers Guild, I feel I must say that.
Most haven't.
Most.
That you know of.
We also spoke to Lisa about writing a vintage murder that we incorrectly thought was the first episode of the character D.S. Charlie Nelson. She did write one of the early episodes for Charlie, but not the first.
So then you went on to write Nelson's first episode. So you didn't know it was going to be Jones's episode, but you knew you were writing Nelson's first episode.
Yeah.
Did they tell you who that character was, since they were going to have him in that kind of serial storyline for a while?
If I remember rightly, as I started writing, I think I came and going, it'll be the same old team. I was like, no, Jason's gone. Not under a cloud or anything. He just wanted to go off and try something else. They hadn't cast, I'm afraid I cannot remember the name of the actor. That is my thing. But they hadn't cast him yet. But we had a very short biog for him that it's a bit of a trope. He's come from the big city. He's come into this small town. He thinks he underestimates Barnaby. He doesn't think that this country life is going to be for him. And, by the time he realises that there's such a high murder rate in Corson that he's going to love working there. And Barnaby earns his respect as well.
It must have been interesting to have kind of the responsibility of writing a character for the first time who you knew was going to be in there for seasons to come.
It's lovely as well because you get to put your little voice on him and we do it, and he's such a great actor as well.
Yeah.
He's gone on to amazing things and I'd never heard of him before he came into the show. So it was quite a journey of discovery. And there's always a nerve-wracking thing, which is, will the audience react to him well? Because everybody loved Jason so much. Mm-hmm. And it was also a chance to, I think, make sure that he had some investigative drive as well, make sure that he had a job to do and he was bringing something to the investigation. That was what we wanted from the very off for that character as well. And I think he's a bit of an action man. We've got scenes of him playing tennis later on and all that carry on. So I think we got the best out of him.
I don't know if you saw any of the D.S. Scott episodes, but I think they were trying to bring that gritty London flawed detective in with that, and it just didn't feel right.
No. And
then he got sick and never showed up again.
Sick. Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, and it's a show that it's a very fragile ecosystem, and it could have gone terribly wrong when John Nettles left. I thought it was very clever, although I don't know, you've probably talked to us, you know why they had to bring in someone who was a relation of that character. It's because in EU countries outside of the English-speaking world, the show is called Inspector Barnaby. So they needed to keep the name.
And he didn't have a son to become Barnaby, and Cully wasn't going to do it. Cully had a lot of careers, but one of them was not being a detective.
Yeah. No, in the slightest. Bless her. I think it's also a function of how it's written. The writers, there's no, like the American system, the writers' room, we don't sit in a room together. You're commissioned and you work alone. And there's a little bit, well, he's saying that in that episode, so can you do something a bit different? Oh, we've already had a strangulation this season. Can you do something different for the murder? So yeah, I think if it was an American show, we'd all be in a room together and we'd be building these great arcs for those continuing characters, but just not how it works on that show.
And in Midsomer, it doesn't really seem important. I mean, if they're true to who they are throughout all the episodes that they're in, that's enough.
I agree. And if we turned it into a soap, then it just wouldn't be Midsomer. It's that those gentle little comedy boat ends, the beginning and the end, and the little story that gives us something to cut away to maybe when things are a bit grim. I think that works really, really well for the show.
So how long do you spend writing an episode like this on your own writing it?
So from the soup to the nuts, it's a 6-month job. So from the first pitch and up until when they're and I don't say this lightly, when they're kidnapping you and bringing you down to Pinewood. So on every episode, I'm sure the writers have told you this, you'll get a phone call saying, oh, we love this draft, but we need to work it through a bit more. Can you come down to Pinewood? Now, I live in Leeds, which is in the north of England, so it's door to door, it's about a 5-hour journey.
Oh, do you stay overnight?
Oh yeah. And the first time they did this, they were like, oh, come down this week and we'll do an edit. And no one ever mentioned staying overnight. So I didn't pack for an overnight stay. I went there on the Monday. I was still there on the Friday.
Wow.
So they'd send a very blushing runner out to buy me some knickers and some T-shirts. Bless him.
We went to Finland to do some academic gigs, and we were without our luggage the whole time we were there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we had to kind of do the same thing.
We had to go to a department store and just like, is there anything here we can wear? Okay. And we had to live in that. So we can relate to that.
Yeah. And I know that I once didn't pack the jeans I needed for a trip to Berlin with the Writers Guild and ended up studying a branch of CNA, which for any British people who are watching this, there's no such thing as CNA in the UK. It closed down, but they have it on the continent. Trying to think of the German for, I need bigger sizes. Where are your bigger sizes?
Bigger jeans. It's when you just turn around and like show them your tush and go,
And this whole notion, like one of the episodes, they go from Midsomer to Brighton and they stop halfway for lunch. I'm like, it's a 90-minute drive.
Exactly.
We do that in America to get to work sometimes.
Yeah. And then again at the end of the day.
Exactly. Well, no, thankfully, hopefully, the commute is a dying thing now because of the joy of Zoom. So
that's right.
It's made life a lot better for writers. There's been less going down for an hour's script edit and then coming straight back on the train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about how you got the idea for the cheese. I have to ask you about another episode that you wrote, because you wrote Saints and Sinners, which has the archaeological dig. Did you already know about archaeology? Were you a Time Team fan or something, or did you have to brush up on it?
I didn't know a thing. It was the idea of the relics that I found, the religious relics that I found fascinating. I must have been reading something about them, and that idea of how a little industry can build up around it. I have lots of friends in Ireland, so there's quite a bit of that sort of idolatry in Ireland around the Catholic Church, all that kind of thing. And I am an atheist and find it fascinating. And I like the idea of a naughty vicar as well, which I think is a real staple of British detective drama. So that, it started with that, and then the idea that it would all be fake and buried treasure in amongst it all as well. And that episode, I think, of all of them took shape really quickly, because once I got into it, I was like, this is really interesting, and building it. So I really love that episode. I think it's, of the ones I've written, it's my favourite. It's Saints and Sinners. I've never seen a rough cut. When they've sent me the rough cuts of Midsomer, it's never disappointing, because it's the best location manager everywhere. It looks amazing. Great actors as well, but they're so good at filming them. They always look fantastic, and that's not, on a limited budget. It's not a big budget show, but they know how to pick their locations and light them to look amazing.
They do a lot of filmic things, a lot of really good filmic things. There's an episode where they do a oneer that just shows up out of nowhere. You're like, whoa, this is a really good oneer.
It's like a crane shot that then sweeps down over the heads of people and then goes down to like face level in one smooth move. I don't even know how they did it.
Somebody had watched their Spielberg that week.
That's nice. And those shots are much more achievable than they used to be because of drone technology now. It was a little bit overused at first, like, all right, you've got the drone out, well done. But now you can get the most, like say, sweeping cinematic shots that just look incredible with the drone now.
Well, yeah, when the drone shot doesn't feel like a drone shot, when it actually feels like a helicopter shot, is nice. But I also like it when they use the drones in ways that you would have never thought. There's a video online of a drone shot that goes into a bowling alley and through the bowling alley and then comes back out. And it's just, you'd never see something like that.
That's very, very cool, actually. Yeah. So, I think, we have great technicians in the UK as well. So I think if a director comes on and goes, I'd really like to do this in a oneer, then everybody will go, okay, let's
do it.
See how we can do it.
You've written about cheese murders. You've written about archaeology and relics. How about those rabbits? Where did that idea come from?
So they'd asked me about, that was my last one. So they'd asked me about for a fourth one, and I think it was coming off Call the Midwife or something else. And I was like, oh God, I'm really struggling to come up with an idea for this. And then Joe Wright sent me an email saying, I was in a hotel this week and there was a pet show on. And this guy came into the bar and he had a pair of hamster-themed underpants on. He was showing everybody in the bar these underpants. I'll leave you with that. Okay. But then I started to do the research into these small animal shows and all the rest of it, and the enormous competitiveness of them. And again, I think Midsomer really works when it's a world that outside of that village, it doesn't matter to anyone else. It's then those murders are not on the front page of the News of the World or the Sun, but they're really important to the Cosmic Gazette. And so the idea of this little fiefdom where people really care about this pet show, that soon ignited it. And then I still think it's my best murder, which is the rabbit fur in the car ventilation system. I was so proud of that, and it was a hard sell because they were like, "What is that? What would happen?" Yes, yeah. Why doesn't she have her inhaler? Because the murderer takes it away, and I had to really give it the sell, and I think it works brilliantly.
Do you have to think through, like, one of the things that we do for our episodes is I do the crazy research of, like, well, what happens if a maggot gets in your eye? But so you have to know whether that cheese needle will actually kill somebody. How do you figure that out?
Lots and lots of Googling. There's a reason why I give a weekly donation to Wikipedia, because God bless the people who write those things. And I regularly fall down a Wikipedia hole. And that's, for these shows, that's great. It's like I've come out the other end with far more ideas for how I can kill these people. Yeah. So yeah, the rabbit thing, as I went and had a walk around a pet shop to think things through, and went on sort of Reddit accounts for chinchilla owners and things like that. So all that stuff, the research is the best bit. But the problem is, if anybody ever looks at my search history, then there's an orange jumpsuit for me. I think I'm on some list somewhere, some government list somewhere. For new tricks, I googled how, and this is before Breaking Bad, how to cook meth, and I did have one of the characters cooking meth in his kitchen. That very nearly didn't get past the BBC. We snuck it by them,
it's got to be just accurate enough, but not like instructionally accurate, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You run into that with explosives a lot of the time. You're like, he mixed this and this, and
mm-hmm. The weird thing is, I used to work at the start of my career, I worked in factual television. I worked for a science company, and we had explosives around the place, bottles of mercury, all sorts of things. And there is an episode where we say how you make dynamite. We give the recipe. But in factual television, that's fine. That's education, not in drama.
No, not in drama. Do you find, now that you've written that way, now that you've thought like, oh, here's a little slice of a world that I didn't know much about, but the people involved in it are really involved in. Are there worlds like that if you had the opportunity, you would want to dive into, that you're more curious about?
I think probably every writer has that area that they're trying to sell a show on. So for me, the Naughty Vicar thing persists. I love the idea of a character who should be the paragon of virtue in a community, but actually is dodgy as hell. And I find that fascinating. So I've got a couple of pictures, and one day I'll get them away. The Church of England generally is very, very interesting. And I interviewed for this other idea, I did interview quite a few vicars, and an amazing woman who trains vicars, and she should be the bishop. She had proper Christian, the sort of Christian faith you absolutely respect and believe in. Wasn't true of all the vicars I interviewed, if I'm absolutely honest. And it was so fascinating. It's really interesting world. So that, and religious belief in general, I have nothing but respect for people who have really great religious belief and use it to make the world a better place. But there's a lot of people not doing that.
Yeah, in Midsomer, the vicars are either really boring and kind of dry, not very interesting, or they're murderers.
Yeah.
Lopping people's heads off with a big sword.
Absolutely. And that's exactly as it should be.
We put out a podcast about Midsomer. Do you listen to any other podcasts? Are you a podcast listener?
It feels like there's such a wealth of podcasts. It is an embarrassment of riches at the moment. So I was on and I listened to one called The Moon Under the Water, where the guests get to build their perfect pub, which again is a very British thing. And that was joyous. I really loved that. And I'm listening to a West Wing podcast at the moment, because I'm doing a big West Wing rewatch, which I do probably once every couple of years. But I mentioned it on Twitter this time, and someone said, oh, it's a really damaging show. I hope you watch it. Basically, I hope you're watching it through 21st century lens, and suggested a podcast for me. It's difficult because Aaron Sorkin is a god to me. I really do think he's one of the greatest writers ever. I love him. But boy, his sexual politics are poor. Ooh.
Yeah, especially through the lens of history, too. I mean, you can only excuse so much, right?
And watching that first series of West Wing where basically the women's job is to go, I don't understand this aspect of American government. Please explain it to me, Josh. And it just over and over again, it's like, oh, man.
Speaking of difficult vicars, how was the second season of Fleabag for you?
I thought it was better than the first series, actually. I think British writers have a very complicated relationship with that show because Phoebe was thrust into the spotlight. It must have been a really uncomfortable place to be at first. And you'll know that people knew her as an actor from Broadchurch, and then suddenly she's in this huge show saying really important but really uncomfortable things, and then she's running Killing Eve, and then she's in a Star Wars movie, and then she's got this massive deal from Amazon. And it was around the time that the Guild were doing lots of work on female writers and how we're not very well represented in British television and British film. And every time we spoke to someone, yeah, but what about Phoebe Waller-Bridge? We love her, it's great, but don't think that because she's had her success, women writers are ever. It was enormously frustrating. But I think that second series of Fleabag is some of the best television I've ever seen. And I think she's opened a door for so many other writers for women not to be perfect and for their sexual relationships to be complicated. And I think without that second series of Fleabag, we wouldn't have I May Destroy You. I think she opened the door for Michaela who then took the ball and ran with it to the end zone. There we go, an American sports reference for you. Those women are kicking down doors, and Fleabag is just... And really weirdly, I recently lost my father, and he had very eclectic tastes in television. He loved a British show called Last of the Summer Wine, which was just a silly comedy, and it used to drive my mum mad. Every time she came to the room, he was watching it all over again. And Dinner Ladies, a Victoria Wood show. But he loved Fleabag. He watched it 3 times.
Wow.
That was great.
That fourth wall breaking moment in Fleabag where he asks her who she's talking to, it stunned me.
I held my breath like I would do in a thriller.
Finally, we got around to our latest favorite TV show, Ted Lasso. You have all these women's voices, all these diverse voices. Why are we obsessed with a show about a happy white man from America playing sports, but it is the best thing on television right now?
So I've only got a subscription to Apple TV this week. I got it free with the phone. I got to upgrade my phone. And they went, do you want this? I went, yeah. And then I'd seen people talking about the show and having a very strong reaction to it. And I think like a lot of people, when someone goes on and on about something, is it as good as everyone said? Well, spoiler alert, I rinsed through the first series in less than 24 hours. I couldn't stop watching it. And I was sobbing. I mean, just crying at it, but loving it. It was happy tears. And I don't know, maybe it's after the last couple of years that, what we've been through as a planet, that just the idea of someone triumphing because they're nice, because they care, because they believe, it really felt like balm for the soul. And I had very similar feelings about Schitt's Creek and The Good Place, that modelling of, do you know what, be nice and you'll win people over. It just felt, it's like balm for the soul. So,
and it can be interesting to watch nice characters.
Yeah.
They don't have to be evil.
We came to it almost exactly the same way you did about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Everybody was saying blah, blah, blah. And then what happened was I saw the YouTube clip of where she comes in and they talk about divorce when she finally confesses to him. At a moment of television that I never thought I would ever see. We've both gone through divorces and that tears.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I'm like, I have to know, like, I'm overwhelmed by that moment, not knowing any of the backstory. And then I saw the backstory. I'm like, oh my gosh, when this happens again, I'm just going to be a fountain.
Yeah. And I think also it was Jason Sudeikis having, when he did the Series 2 premiere, having Marcus Rashford, etc., those people's names on his jumper. If you've been in the UK, the discourse about footballers and taking the knee and all of that. I mean, you had it with Colin Kaepernick, but oh my God, it's been so toxic. And the minute I saw that photograph of him supporting those black football players, I don't care how good the show is, I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't shy away from that. I've just watched the Christmas episode, which was released this week, and without spoilers, because I know people will only just be getting around to watching it. The idea of different cultures coming together, that reality of what it must be like to be in a Premiership team and away from home at Christmas. Oh, it broke me.
And
I was in pieces.
Funny, incredible.
Oh, it's so funny.
Oh, don't pay attention to him. He's just Dutch.
Yeah.
Wow, what a joke. And that joke where he hands back the American infantryman to him and says, "We have a different relationship with the American."
So beautifully timed, but also, and I can say this because I'm a Leeds United fan, which is now a Premiership football team. I can say this: they're getting the football right as well. Yeah. So it can often be, with the greatest of respect to your wonderful nation, it can be a bit uncomfortable when Americans do Britain. And whilst I think it is a very Love Actually world, although Richmond does look like that, it is pretty, and it's all the buildings are grade 2 listed, so they have to maintain them. It still feels real. It still feels like the UK that I know, and it is lovely. I think sometimes it's a little bit glossed over. I think Premiership clubs are probably not nice, but having Jamie Tartt as that character who comes good is fascinating.
Oh,
because
when Jamie asked for the tape to put
I just want Roy to come on Midsomer.
Oh, yes. And the fact that he writes the show as well, has been in it as well, that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Oh, he's great. And that is, what a character that is. It's just glorious.
Well, and it is a show that is rewriting masculinity too, which needs to be done. Men apologize. Roy was one of the first guys to be on television and say something like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was being an idiot there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's move on." I
love that.
And that so many shows, they either work up to the grand male apology, which I'm like, you just need to apologize in the moment, not some grand apology later.
People apologize every day. It's not a special occasion.
You do it all the time, don't you? But yeah, no, and I think it's interesting now. That's other shows I've noticed that observation of masculinity. I think It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia has gone on that journey to a certain extent with the Rob, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Rob McElhenney? Yeah. The guy who's just bought Wrexham Football Club over here with Ryan Reynolds. That journey for him, and then his coming out scenes and all the rest of it, that felt progressive as well for a show that is incredibly about toxic masculinity. Oh, yeah. To explore that, I thought was brilliant. And I really, the first couple of the episodes that show, I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to, people rave about this, I'm not getting it. And then I fell in love with it.
To me, I know we're a Midsomer podcast, but Ted Lasso it was personally transformational. Like, I want to be more like that kind of person.
Yeah.
You know, like life is hard enough without creating problems. You should just help one another.
And that sense that, you don't always have to be on top. I love how for the first part it said, I don't care about winning. It's about, getting the team to work together. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think that's great, because that is how you win in the end, is having a good time doing what you're doing and not hurting other people.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely, the message is just glorious and it's lovely. I love Jason Sudeikis. I've loved him in everything I've ever seen him in as well.
Well, and Anthony Head was just fantastic. Oh, I couldn't believe how good, how much you hate him.
It's so subtle. The way he's putting it down felt so. I think probably every woman watching that goes, yeah. I've had that before.
We've all had a partner like that or a boss like that. Yeah.
And to bring
A
it
dad
around
like that, somebody.
to Midsomer, Annette Badlands is a treasure.
Yeah.
I had forgotten she was in Jabberwocky, which I was like, wait a minute. I've been watching this woman since I was 18 when I saw Jabberwocky. She is just brilliant.
She's that great British tradition of the grand dame, battle axe type things. I'd put her in the same bracket as Miriam Margolyes, for example, who I had the pleasure of writing for on Call the Midwife. That strong, uncompromising, I have zero F's to give woman, which I just love writing women like that. And I think people love watching women like that. And that's one of the eternal frustrations of pitching to executives is sometimes you go, do you know what? People want to see themselves on telly. They want to see that role model of, I don't care how I look. I want to have that power and I can control a room by being incredibly strong but feminine at the same time. I think she's in that ilk. I want to see more women like that, more older women on television.
Well, she has no time for Barnaby when she joins Midsomer. She's
she's like, you're boring. You're not nearly fun enough. I'm way more fun than you are. And again, she's not glamour. She's not a size 2. She is, her face is unique.
Yeah.
And I love that about her. I like watching her.
I think the medical examiners, they've done a really good job with them on this, because I loved writing Tamsin as that very sort of slightly uptight, but actually gets the job never fazed by anything. She said, you need that person in Midsomer who doesn't go, oh my God, she was killed by cheese. Just goes, what's the murder weapon? You're standing in it. I'm so proud of that line.
It's very good.
The idea of the indefatigable, I think, is just lovely. And Annette Badland does such a good job of that.
I love that Kate pokes at Barnaby and Jones for being too uptight.
Yeah.
Like, she has this super serious job, and yet she's like, you guys should lighten up.
Yeah.
You should come to my birthday party or whatever,
Exactly. And when she's living with, because I wrote that, when we find out she's a bit of a slob.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Obviously at work, it's got to be just so, but the spaghetti all over the house.
Again, I love imperfect women. I don't love perfect women.
Yeah.
Because there's no perfect women.
No. Those aren't real people.
Yeah. One of the questions you get asked when you're writing things for female characters, the producers will get antsy if the female characters get angry or vindictive or are not perfect. And the question you get asked is, but will we like her? It's like, well, maybe not in that moment, not in that scene, but down the line we will do, and we'll understand her. It's never a question I'm asked about male characters. And in fact, now I just throw it back. I just go, I'm not even answering that.
Good for you. Yeah. And the writing is better for it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Characters need to be flawed. They need to have quirks. Perfection is boring.
That's my one peeve about Midsomer, is that Sarah Barnaby needs flaws.
And you know what? She's the actor's lovely and has a real sense of comedy as well. Yeah, she's
just too perfect. She doesn't have any bad quirks or bad habits or anything.
I think she's got the slightly sarcastic gene. See, I don't
think that's a flaw.
When Barnaby found out that one character was seeing women housewives on the side, she was like, oh, really?
When she got the organic veg delivery. Yeah. Is there anything that you're working on now that you want people to know about or that you're excited about?
So I'm back on Call the Midwife, which is a completely different show.
Wow,
to Midsomer Murders, and that's been lovely. If you're in the UK, hopefully theatre will get going again next year. My theatre work will be going on tour, but other than that, keep watching Midsomer because it's such a great show.
Well, you think you'll ever write another episode for Midsomer?
Possibly, although it's had a change of personnel because company make it now instead of Bentley Pictures, although I'm doing some development work with company at the moment. It's a big responsibility to take it on. It's a big chunk of work. So maybe if they ask me back, I'd have to see what I've got in the pipeline, but never say never.
Thank you so much for talking to us. This is so fun.
It's been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Thank you so much for your time.
An absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. You've been
Thanks.
awesome. All right, Maniacs. That was the great Lisa Holdsworth. All her info is in the show notes, so show her some love this week, and we will return next week with episode 96, The Christmas Haunting. Bye, Maniacs.